Imagine standing in the dark. A spider moves in the corner. A shadow falls from above. A crowd stares as you try to speak. These fears feel so personal, yet almost everyone knows them. Are they just tricks of the mind, or voices from our ancient past? Fear of snakes, fear of falling, fear of the unknown in the night. These fears have followed us across time. They are not random. They are the marks of survival, pressed into our bones by thousands of years. What kept our ancestors alive still whispers in us today. Every phobia has a story, a memory carried forward, from the wild forests, from the open plains, from the crowded streets of old cities. To understand our fears today, we must travel back into history, to the moments when fear first became a shield. Stay with me as we walk into the story of fear itself. Like this video if you want to keep uncovering hidden truths of our human past. And now, let us step into the first chapter, where our earliest ancestors shaped the roots of every phobia we know. Long before cities and villages, long before stone walls and roads, our ancestors lived close to the earth. They slept under stars, and their survival depended on their senses. A small sound in the grass could mean danger. A rustle might hide a snake or spider. To be afraid was not weakness, it was wisdom. Fear sharpened the eyes and the ears. It kept people alive when the world was filled with predators. The instinct to jump at movement or shrink back from the dark was a natural shield. Every heartbeat of fear whispered, "Stay safe, stay alive." This is why so many of us today still feel unease when we see a spider crawl, or when we walk into a room that is too dark. The modern world feels far away from the forests and the plains. But our bodies remember. Fear is written into us like a language older than words. It is not random. It is the memory of survival itself, carried forward from those who came before. The fear of snakes is one of the oldest we know. In many parts of the world, venomous snakes were deadly. To notice their shape, even from the corner of the eye, was to survive. Our ancestors who paid attention to this danger passed their blood onward, while those who did not often did not live long. That is why, even today, a simple picture of a snake can make the skin crawl. It is not only culture, it is a story written deep inside the brain. Think also of thunder in the night sky, the sudden strike of lightning, the loud crack that shook the earth. For early humans, it was not science. It was raw power, unpredictable and vast. To fear storms was to seek shelter. Fear was a teacher, and its lessons were carried forward through countless generations. When lightning flashes today, we may smile and say it is only electricity. Yet somewhere in us, the old heart still races, remembering the storm as a god. Fear of falling is another ancient shadow. Imagine climbing a tree for fruit, or walking along a rocky cliff to hunt. One misstep could mean the end. Those who felt fear at the edge, who respected the height, were more likely to survive. That is why so many people today still feel dizzy at the top of a tower, or weak in the knees on a balcony. The body is reminding us of cliffs from a time when falling meant death. But fear was not only about death. It also kept families together. When danger was near, fear pulled people closer. Around the fire, in the safety of the group, hearts beat in rhythm. Fear created unity, and unity created survival. Even today, when we gather with friends in a dark theater, or huddle together in a storm, the same ancient bond returns. Fear does not only divide us, it also ties us together in ways older than history. Fear of the dark is one of the oldest guardians of life. In the night, predators had the advantage, glowing eyes in the shadows, claws hidden in silence. For early humans, the dark was not emptiness. It was alive with unseen dangers. The body learned to fear what it could not see. The quickened breath, the pounding heart, the shiver on the skin. These were alarms that said, "Do not walk too far from the fire. Stay close. Stay safe." Even now, in the comfort of modern houses, the same feeling returns. A hallway without light, a forest path under the moon, an empty street after sunset. The mind fills the unknown with shapes. It may seem childish, but it is ancient wisdom still alive in us. Fear of the dark taught humanity to value light, to gather around fire, to build homes, to seek community. In darkness, we found fear. In light, we found hope. The two cannot be separated. They belong together. Fear was not only about nature, it also began to change when humans changed. As people moved from wild forests into settled villages, new shadows began to rise. Fear of sickness, fear of crowds, fear of open places. Each new way of living created new dangers, and the mind adapted with new phobias. This is the story of how civilization itself shaped the human heart. The first farms, the first towns, the first shared spaces where many lived together. With them came new fears we still carry today. As we step forward into the next chapter, let us see how the dawn of civilization brought new phobias to life. Shadows born not only from nature, but from society itself. When humans first settled into villages, the world changed forever. The wide plains and wild forests were no longer their only home. Now, huts stood in rows, and fields stretched beyond them. Yet with these changes came new fears. Open land was no longer a space of freedom. It became a place of exposure. Rival tribes could strike, predators could watch from afar. The open field became both a gift and a danger. This gave rise to a fear we know today as agoraphobia, the unease of wide, unguarded places. This fear had purpose. To step too far into the open meant being seen, vulnerable with no cover. Those who felt caution in such spaces were safer. Even in our time, walking through a large empty square or standing in the middle of a deserted field can bring an ancient chill. The body remembers exposure. The mind whispers, danger is near. Fear, once again, was not foolishness, but a warning carved from survival. Life in villages also meant living close together. People gathered in tight spaces, shared food, and worked side by side. But with closeness came sickness. Diseases spread quickly when many lived under the same roof or drank from the same well. Fear of dirt, fear of the unclean, became a silent teacher. This was the seed of what we now call germophobia. To shun filth was to protect life. Clean hands, clean water, clean shelter. These were shields against unseen enemies. Even though people did not yet know about germs, they saw the pattern. The sick often came from foul water or crowded spaces. Over time, the instinct grew strong. Those who feared dirt often lived longer, passing the instinct to their children. Today, in our modern world, the same unease lingers. A dirty surface, a crowded train, a stranger coughing nearby, all awaken the old fear. What was once survival is now daily caution, proof that the village never left us. The shift to farming also changed the rhythm of time. People no longer wandered freely, but lived by the cycles of crops. With this came responsibility, and with responsibility came new worries. The fear of failure grew. Failure of the harvest, failure to feed the family, failure to survive the long winter. This was not the quick fear of a predator's strike. It was the slow, heavy fear of the future. It weighed on hearts and shaped human thought. This new kind of fear was different. It lived not in the body, but in the mind. People looked at the sky, wondering if the rains would come, or if famine waited instead. Anxiety was born here, in the soil of early fields. The fear of tomorrow joined the fear of today. Even now, when we feel stress about work or money, we are echoing the same ancient worry. Will the harvest be enough? The answer shaped not just survival, but the birth of civilization itself. As villages grew into towns, fear began to take new forms. The crowded streets, filled with voices and footsteps, brought both safety and unease. In small tribes, everyone knew each other, but in larger groups there were strangers, and strangers could mean danger. The human heart began to carry a new kind of fear, the unease of being judged, watched, or rejected. This was the seed of social anxiety. The comfort of a circle around the fire became harder to find in the noise of a busy marketplace. Fear of strangers was not foolishness. It was protection. To be cautious with those you did not know meant avoiding betrayal, theft, or violence. Over time, the feeling grew sharper until it became part of the human spirit. Today, the same fear still whispers. Standing in front of a crowd, meeting new people, or even joining a busy gathering. The ancient pulse returns. What began in the first towns still beats in us. Fear became not just a shield against predators, but against each other. By leaving the forests and creating towns, humanity gained much, but it also gained new shadows. Fear of open spaces, fear of dirt, fear of strangers, all were born with civilization. Each one was a teacher, guiding people to survive in a changing world. But greater changes still waited ahead. For in the centuries that followed, fear would be reshaped by sickness and death on a massive scale. Whole cities would be touched by plague, entire generations scarred by loss. These fears were not whispers in the grass, but cries echoing through every street. As we step into the next chapter, let us see how the Middle Ages, with its plagues and shadows, carved even deeper fears into the human heart. The Middle Ages were an age of shadows, and in those shadows, fear grew stronger than ever. The greatest fear was death itself. Streets filled with the sound of church bells, ringing for the sick and the dying. Families watched helplessly as loved ones vanished within days. The fear of death was no longer a distant whisper. It was a constant presence, walking side by side with every soul. This fear is known as Thanatophobia, and in the medieval heart, it was always near. Yet this fear was not only about loss. It shaped faith, art, and daily life. People built cathedrals to honor the divine, painted visions of heaven and hell, and prayed for mercy. Death was not hidden away, but spoken of in every sermon, carved into every stone. Even today, when we feel uneasy about speaking of death, or when silence falls at the mention of mortality, we are echoing the same ancient shadow. The medieval fear of death still walks with us. Alongside the fear of death came the fear of sickness. The Black Death swept across Europe like a storm. Entire towns were emptied. Whole families vanished in weeks. Nosophobia, the fear of disease, grew into a collective wound. People saw neighbors fall ill and avoided them in terror. Doors were shut, streets left empty. Silence replaced the sound of laughter. To fear disease was to fear the unseen, an invisible shadow that could not be fought with sword or shield. This fear reshaped culture. Doctors wore masks shaped like birds, filled with herbs to ward off the plague. Art showed skeletons dancing with kings and peasants alike, proof that death spared no one. Even today, when a pandemic strikes or when we flinch at the sound of a cough, we are carrying this medieval memory. The fear of sickness still lives in us, a whisper from the time when the plague ruled the world. But there was another fear that grew with the city itself. As villages turned into bustling towns, people felt lost in the crowd. No longer part of small tribes, they were surrounded by strangers. Judgment, gossip, and the gaze of others became heavy burdens. This was the root of social anxiety. In close-knit villages, every face was familiar. In cities, the crowd became a mirror of fear. This unease shaped how people lived. Some sought solitude in monasteries, fleeing the noise of markets and taverns. Others carried their fear quietly, always alert to the eyes of neighbors. Even now, when we feel our heart race before speaking in public, or when silence fills us in a room of strangers, we are echoing the same medieval unease. The city gave us opportunity, but it also gave us a new kind of fear, the fear of being seen. In the medieval world, fear was not only private, it was public, shared in rituals and traditions. Processions through the streets carried icons and relics meant to ward off disease. Bells rang not only for death, but for prayer. Fear was woven into the rhythm of daily life. It was a shadow in every home and a companion in every journey. People learned to live with fear, to see it as both punishment and protection. Even art reflected this uneasy balance. Walls were painted with visions of Judgment Day, reminding all that life was fragile. Music in the churches echoed with sorrow and hope together. Fear gave birth to creativity, to devotion, to stories that still echo in legends. When we look back, we see a society where fear was not hidden. It was embraced as part of being human. And so, even today, when we feel anxious in uncertain times, we are closer to medieval hearts than we imagine. The Middle Ages left us with deep shadows, fear of death, fear of disease, fear of judgment. Yet, through these shadows, humanity also found meaning and built culture that still shapes us today. If you are finding these hidden truths as fascinating as I do, take a moment to like this video. It helps more curious minds join our journey. Now we step forward into a new age, the Industrial Revolution. Fear would take on new shapes born from machines, factories, and towering cities. The shadows of iron and smoke would carve new phobias into human hearts. Let us walk together into this world of steam and steel and see what new fears it gave birth to. The world of the 18th and 19th centuries was filled with new sounds and new fears. The quiet fields were replaced by the pounding of hammers, the hiss of steam, the clatter of machines. People left villages to work in crowded factories, where air was thick and light was scarce. Here, fear of being trapped grew strong. Claustrophobia, the unease of small enclosed spaces, spread among miners, factory workers, and travelers in the first underground trains. The machine-driven world brought not only progress, but also new shadows. Inside the mines, men worked deep below the earth. Darkness pressed against them. Walls seemed to breathe, and air was thin. A single cave-in could end many lives. Fear was not weakness. It was a constant reminder of the risk. In the factories, the walls closed in, filled with smoke and noise. For those who had once lived with wide skies, the sudden confinement was crushing. Even now, when we step into a crowded elevator or feel uneasy in a tight room, we echo the fears born in the age of industry. Another fear rose high above the ground. Cities grew taller, with bridges of steel and towers of glass. For the first time, humans stood on structures that touched the clouds. Acrophobia, the fear of heights, became sharper as the human scale shifted. Looking down from a tall building, the earth felt far away, and the body swayed with the dizzy pull of the sky. Fear reminded people of their fragile balance. It whispered of the ancient cliffs, now reborn in the heart of cities. This fear was both wonder and warning. Engineers celebrated progress, building taller each year, but workers who stood on scaffolds felt their knees shake. Even today, standing on a balcony or looking down from a skyscraper window, many feel the same rush of unease. The Industrial Revolution changed not only how people lived, but how they felt their own bodies in space. Fear of falling became not just a memory of nature, but a shadow cast by human invention itself. The city itself was a new world of fear. Crowded streets filled with carriages and smoke, narrow alleys hidden between tall buildings, the constant noise of engines and bells. In this chaos, people felt small and powerless. Fear of the machine grew, the fear of something vast, loud, and beyond human control. For centuries, dangers had come from nature. Now they came from human hands. This unease shaped imagination. Writers told stories of machines that devoured workers, of engines that broke free of their masters. These tales were not only fantasy, they were echoes of daily life. Each clang of iron, each hiss of steam, reminded people that the world was no longer their size. It was bigger, louder, and less forgiving. Today, when we feel overwhelmed by technology or lost in the noise of modern life, we are still echoing that first fear of machines. The Industrial Revolution also changed the rhythm of daily life. Once, people rose with the sun and rested with the night. Now, the clock ruled. Factory bells rang at dawn and again at dusk. Long hours in dim workshops left many exhausted, with little time to breathe. The pressure of time itself became a source of unease. Fear was no longer only about death or danger. It was about falling behind, not meeting demands, not keeping pace with the relentless machine. This was the birth of modern anxiety. For the first time, humans lived by strict schedules, tied to gears and steam. The mind learned a new fear, the fear of failing to keep up. Today, when we feel overwhelmed by deadlines or restless under constant pressure, we are echoing the same shadow. The Industrial Revolution taught humanity progress, but it also taught us the cost of racing against time. Fear in the age of industry was not simple. It lived in narrow tunnels, on dizzying towers, in crowded streets, and within the ticking of the clock. These phobias were born from progress itself, shadows created by invention. The world was changing faster than the human heart could follow. Yet new questions soon arose. If fear had always been part of survival, what would happen when science began to study it? When doctors gave names to phobias, when psychology began to search for answers, fear itself would change again. Let us step into the next chapter, where science met shadows, and where fear became not just a feeling, but a subject to be measured, studied, and understood. By the 19th century, fear itself began to change. For the first time, scholars and doctors asked, "What is fear?" No longer just a whisper of survival, it became something to study, to name, to explain. Medical journals spoke of phobias, a new word taken from the Greek for fear. What had once been seen as demons, curses, or divine punishment now became symptoms, patterns, and disorders. The language of fear shifted, and with it, the way people thought of their own shadows. This was a great transformation. People who once believed they were haunted could now be told they had a phobia. It did not erase the suffering, but it changed its shape. Fear was no longer only mystery, it was also science. Today, when we speak of anxiety or phobias, we echo this shift. The medieval shadows gave way to the doctor's pen, and in that pen, fear became something new. Not just a story, but a diagnosis. Psychology was still young, but it offered a new lens. Doctors began cataloging fears: fear of spiders, fear of darkness, fear of crowds. Each phobia was written down as though it were an insect pinned to a page. The human mind became a field of study, with fears as its hidden creatures. What once lived in whispers and superstitions now lived in books and case studies. Yet even as science gave names, the mystery did not fade. Patients spoke of racing hearts, of frozen voices, of dreams filled with shadows. Doctors measured and described, but they could not remove the ancient roots. Fear was both patient and puzzle. Even today, when we read medical articles about anxiety, we are part of this long story, the story of turning shadows into science, and still finding the shadows remain. As fear entered the language of science, it also entered the culture in new ways. Writers and artists drew on this language to tell stories. Gothic novels spoke of madness and phobia, blending science with imagination. Painters showed figures trembling in candlelight, their fears unnamed but deeply human. Fear was no longer only a private burden. It became a subject of art, literature, and debate. This was the beginning of the modern view of fear. It was both shadow and subject, haunting and studied, mystery and knowledge. Today, when we watch films about fear or read books about the mind, we continue this tradition. The science of phobia did not silence the echoes of the past. Instead, it gave them new voices, shaping how the modern world understands the oldest companion of humanity. Science did not only give names to fear, it also searched for cures. Doctors experimented with treatments, calming herbs, water therapies, early forms of talking through troubles. Some believed fear lived in the nerves, others in the soul. Though many methods failed, the effort showed something new. Fear was no longer a mystery to endure. It was a challenge to be solved. This was the first step toward modern therapy. The idea that speaking, writing, or even confronting fear could heal was born in this age. Though the tools were simple, the dream was powerful. Humanity was beginning to believe that fear could be managed, not only suffered. Today, when we visit therapists or read about mental health, we are walking in the path first laid in those early studies. The science of fear was still young, but it was growing. By the end of the 19th century, fear had become both ancient and modern. It was still the shadow in the forest, the storm in the sky. But it was also the word on a doctor's page, a drawing in a psychology book. Humanity had begun to measure its oldest companion. Yet, as the new century dawned, fear would take on another face, the face of machines, screens, and endless connection. What happens when fear meets electricity, wires, and glowing screens? When human hearts must live in a world that never sleeps? As we step into the next chapter, let us see how the digital age brought its own phobias, fears that are still with us today, and perhaps growing stronger with every passing hour. The 20th century brought machines of light, first radios, then televisions, and finally computers glowing in dark rooms. Fear began to shift again. No longer just about storms, sickness, or machines of steel. It became about the invisible flow of signals and screens. The body did not always understand what the mind created. Anxiety rose with the hum of electricity, with the glow of a screen that never slept. This new world created new shadows. One of them is called nomophobia, the fear of being without a phone. For many, even a moment without connection feels like danger. The heart races, the breath shortens, the mind whispers, "What if I am cut off?" In ancient times, to be separated from the tribe meant death. Today, the same instinct has shifted into the digital age. Fear has followed us into the light of the screen. Another shadow of our time is the fear of missing out, or FoMO. In the digital age, the world never stops. There's always another message, another event, another image shared on glowing screens. To miss even a moment feels like falling behind. This fear is not of predators or storms, but of absence itself. People scroll through endless feeds, afraid that life is happening elsewhere, without them. The fear is subtle but powerful. It keeps us awake at night, eyes fixed on blue light. It steals peace, replacing it with restless hunger. Our ancestors feared being left behind by the tribe. Today, the same shadow whispers through notifications. Even in safety, fear remains, shaped not by the forest, but by the digital fire we built for ourselves. And then comes the fear of being seen. In the past, it was the gaze of a village or the judgment of a church. Today, it is the endless eye of cameras, profiles, and comments. Glosso and Scopophobia, the fear of speaking in public and the fear of being watched, have grown sharper in the digital age. Each post, each video, each photo carries the weight of invisible eyes. This fear is not only about strangers, it is about the endless possibility of judgment. The body reacts the same way it did in the medieval square: a racing heart, a frozen tongue, a mind filled with shadows. The stage has changed, but the fear remains. To live in a world always watching is to carry the old anxiety into new light. And so, even as we scroll and share, fear shares the space with us, unseen, but always present. The digital age also reshaped time. Once, the night was for rest, but now glowing screens keep us awake. The blue light hums, the feed scrolls endlessly, and the mind cannot let go. Fear creeps in quietly. The fear of silence, the fear of being alone with our thoughts. Surrounded by messages, we have grown uneasy without them. The absence of noise feels unnatural, almost frightening. This constant stimulation has created new shadows. Anxiety thrives in a world that never pauses. We fear not only missing out but also slowing down. To step away feels like falling behind. And so, fear of stillness grows. Different from the fear of predators, but just as real. Today, silence itself can feel like danger, reminding us how far we have traveled from the quiet nights of our ancestors. The fears of the digital age are not simple. They live in our phones, in our feeds, in the endless eyes that watch. Nomophobia, FoMO, social anxiety, all are echoes of old fears, reborn in glowing light. If you are enjoying this journey through hidden histories, consider subscribing. It helps us keep walking together into the shadows of the past and the present. But what about the shadows of culture itself? For not every fear is born in machines or science. Some fears belong to stories, traditions, and beliefs. In the next chapter, we will step into the world of cultural phobias, where ghosts, spirits, and ancient rituals shape what entire societies fear most. Fear has many faces, and not every culture fears the same shadows. In some places, spirits of the dead walk among the living. In others, it is the evil eye that brings sickness and misfortune. Each society carries its own map of fear, shaped by land, faith, and story. These are not random differences. They are reflections of survival, carried through generations. For example, in Mediterranean lands, the fear of the evil eye shaped daily life. Blue charms were worn to guard against curses. A single jealous glance could bring harm. This fear was not only superstition, it was a way of protecting community bonds. In distant lands, other cultures feared restless ancestors, building rituals of respect to keep the spirits calm. Each tradition shows us how fear is also a guide, helping people live together under the unseen watch of the world. In East Asia, ghosts and spirits hold great power in cultural fears. Hungry ghosts, restless souls, and angry ancestors appear in stories, rituals, and festivals. These fears are not only about death, they are about respect. To forget the dead was to invite their wrath. Families built altars, burned offerings, and told stories to keep balance between the living and the unseen. Fear was a bridge, reminding each generation to honor those who came before. This cultural fear still shapes daily life. Even today, during festivals, lanterns float on rivers to guide wandering spirits home. In every flicker of flame, there is both beauty and unease. Fear in these traditions is not simply terror, it is also reverence. It teaches that the past is never gone, that the unseen world is always near. Through fear, the living and the dead remain connected. In Africa, many communities hold deep fears of curses and witchcraft. These fears are not just stories, they are woven into daily survival. A failed harvest, a sudden illness, or an unexpected death could be seen as the work of unseen powers. Fear kept people cautious, respectful of traditions, and mindful of their place in the community. But fear also created strength. Rituals of protection, dances, and songs gave shape to courage. Masks carved with symbols of spirits reminded people that fear could be faced, not only endured. Even today, these traditions live on, showing that fear is not always an enemy. It is also a teacher, guiding people through uncertainty. In every culture, fear becomes a mirror of its people. It tells us what they valued most and what they most longed to protect. In the Americas, fear often took the form of spirits of nature. Mountains, rivers, and forests were alive with power. To offend them was to invite disaster. Storms, earthquakes, and droughts were not only natural events, they were warnings from the unseen world. Fear was woven into respect for the land. Ritual dances, offerings, and songs were made to keep balance. Fear reminded people that nature was both mother and judge. Even today, echoes remain. In many parts of the world, people still speak of sacred places where one should not walk carelessly. Fear here is not weakness, it is wisdom. It teaches that the world is alive, that every stone and tree has meaning. This cultural fear shows that humanity has always lived in dialogue with nature. To forget respect is to invite danger. To live with respect is to walk safely through the mysteries of the earth. Each culture holds its own shadows, evil eyes, hungry ghosts, curses, and spirits of nature. These fears are not random. They are maps of survival, drawn from the land and the stories of ancestors. They remind us that fear is not only about danger, it is about meaning, respect, and belonging. As we leave these cultural echoes behind, we step into the modern world again. The next chapter will show us how fear continues to evolve in science, society, and daily life. But what happens when old fears meet new technologies? When culture, history, and modern life collide? Let us walk together into these modern crossroads of fear, where ancient echoes and future shadows live side by side. The modern world is filled with choices, and with choices come new anxieties. In the past, survival was simple. Find food, find shelter, stay alive. Now, people face endless decisions. What career to choose, where to live, whom to trust. The mind, once focused on immediate threats, now carries the weight of countless possibilities. Fear has become more subtle, but no less powerful. This fear is often called the fear of failure. It is not a lion in the grass or a storm in the sky. It is the quiet worry that we will not be enough. Deadlines, expectations, and comparisons weigh on the heart. Social media amplifies this, showing perfect lives that seem just out of reach. The body still reacts as if danger were near. The racing pulse, the shallow breath, the same old shadows, now wearing modern masks. Another shadow of our time is the fear of isolation. Even as the world grows more connected, many feel more alone than ever. Cities filled with millions can still feel empty. The ancient fear of being cast out by the tribe has not disappeared. it has only changed shape. Now it is felt in empty apartments, in unread messages, in the quiet hum of the phone that never rings. This fear is dangerous not because of predators, but because of silence. Loneliness weighs on the body as heavily as hunger or thirst. It tells us that we are not meant to live alone. Even in the busiest places, people can carry the shadow of isolation. This modern fear is one of absence, and it reminds us of the deep human truth that survival is not only about food or safety, it is also about belonging. Modern fears also live in the future. Climate change, war, economic collapse, threats too vast for one person to control. This fear is not about a single snake or spider. It is about the horizon itself. The mind wonders, what world will tomorrow bring? The ancient instinct of survival has stretched into global anxiety. This fear often feels heavy because it has no clear answer. We recycle, we vote, we hope, but the shadow still lingers. Just as our ancestors feared the sky when storms rolled in, we now fear the planet itself changing before our eyes. It is a reminder that fear will always find shape in the world around us, no matter how much progress we make. The modern crossroads are filled with shadows, both old and new. Fear in the modern world is also tied to speed. Information moves faster than ever before. News travels in seconds. Stories circle the globe in moments. With this comes a new kind of fear, the fear of losing control. Each ping of a notification, each breaking headline shakes the mind. The body reacts with the same old signals: racing heart, tense muscles, restless thoughts. But the danger is not outside the door. It is in the endless flow of information. This fear can feel invisible, but it is heavy. People feel pulled in many directions at once, unable to rest. It is not the roar of a lion, but the drip of constant noise. Even silence feels full, because the world is always moving. This anxiety is not about survival. It is about balance. The old shadow has taken a new form, one that asks not only how we live, but how we slow down. The crossroads of fear are many: failure, isolation, the future, the flood of information. Each one shows us that fear is not gone. It has only changed its mask. If you are finding this journey meaningful, take a moment to leave a comment. Share with me which fear feels most familiar to you. Your voice keeps this story alive. And now, let us step toward the final shadows. What does the future hold for fear itself? Will new phobias rise with new worlds, virtual, digital, and beyond? As we enter the next chapter, we ask, what will humanity fear tomorrow? And what will those fears say about us? Fear has always walked beside us. From the shadows of the forest to the glow of the screen, it has never left. Each age gave it new shapes, new names, new masks. And now, we stand at the edge of tomorrow, wondering what fears await. Will they be born in machines, in the endless digital world, or perhaps in the silence of the unknown that still waits in nature? The future is uncertain, but fear will follow wherever humanity walks. This is not a curse, it is a truth. Fear has kept us alive. It has shaped our choices, guided our communities, and taught us respect for forces greater than ourselves. As we look forward, we carry with us the ancient shadows. The question is not whether we will fear, but how we will learn from it. Perhaps tomorrow's fears will come from worlds we cannot yet imagine. The metaverse, artificial intelligence, even the dream of living on other planets, all bring promises, but also shadows. What happens when the human mind steps into realities it was never built to hold? What fears will grow in the silence of space, or in the endless mirrors of virtual worlds? These questions are not yet answered, but they already stir unease in the heart. And yet, even in these new forms, fear will still be the same. It will quicken the pulse, tighten the breath, sharpen the senses. It will whisper of danger, whether real or imagined. The future will bring new names, but the voice will remain familiar. Fear will still be the companion that walks ahead, warning of paths unseen. As we close this journey, I invite you to reflect. Which fear speaks to you most? Is it the ancient fear of the dark, or the modern fear of disconnection? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your voice is part of this story. And if you found peace in walking these shadows with me, consider sharing this video with someone else who may find comfort in these echoes of the past. Together, we keep the story alive. Fear is not only a burden, it is a teacher. By sharing and speaking of it, we make the shadows lighter. The journey does not end here. It continues in every heart, every night, every whisper of unease. Thank you for walking this path with me. And so we end, as all stories must. Fear began as a shadow in the forest, and now it rests in the light of our screens. It has never been our enemy, only our companion, reminding us of life's fragility and value. Without fear, we would not know courage. Without shadows, we would not seek light. As you drift into rest, let the story of fear become a gentle echo. It is not here to harm you. It is here to remind you that you are alive. Tomorrow will bring its own shadows, but also its own dawn. May you carry both with peace. Good night.